lecture. Since we're ostensibly a media studies program, I wanted to bring in someone who creates across media, but who most assuredly defies classification. I could throw out all these terms like transmedia, multimedia, cross-media, independent, underground, et cetera, but none of them would be sufficient. Raven Mack is a 1996 VCU English grad. From 1996 until 2001, he produced the Confederate Mack zine, which was pretty happening in the Richmond area, big influence on myself and many other people. From 2001 to 2003, he operated the Confederate Mack website. From 2005 to the present, the Rojaneku blog, but again, I hesitate to even use the term blog. It transcends all that. 2012 has been a very busy year for Raven. He's gotten into e-publishing. He's returned to his zine roots with the 1,000 Feathers project, which in true old school style, he refers to as a pamphlet, which I just love. Truth-free pamphlet. Beer Box Haiku book, which I think brought some here, independently published. The Spy-Ku, carved in railroad spikes haiku. You still calling it art you can stab people with?
Yeah,
what was the last thing?
Writing you can stab people
Writing you
with.
can stab people with.
The pen is mightier than the sword. I combined the two.
And now we've got, getting into storytelling, the hand-to-hand haiku event, which if you have not witnessed before is just wonderful. It's pretty much up and happening in Charlottesville, trying to get it going on a regular basis here in Richmond. And then just this week, you're getting ready to tackle sonnets.
Yeah,
Sonnet writing.
yeah. The ideas just happen. So
I'm sure I'm missing a couple of things, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
all right. Yeah, actually, when Paul first got in touch with me about cataloging everything I did, it was a little disturbing that somebody would actually try to catalog the things I've done, because I don't really organize it in an organized way. If you're not, when you come to the hand-to-hand haiku things I do, usually what I do is I just kind of talk for a little bit, and then we do the haiku thing. So not really presenting things is not really my forte. I just don't like doing that too well. And I don't like readings. Like, I don't like reading things I've written. But, contrary and even to myself, I'm going to start today by reading something. And this is from an unfinished short story, and just to give you the back story of the story that this scene is in. It's a small town, and where the Walmart used to be, it's shut down because they built a new Walmart. And the old Walmart's now a flea market on the weekends. But there's this group that runs wrestling matches once a month. So it's the situation where they have a big cage match, and they brought in this guy called Wild Bird Donnie Diamond, who is based on someone who would have been a famous wrestler on TV in the 80s, but is now just a crazy drunk asshole. So this protagonist wrestler and this Donnie Diamond guy have to hide under the cage, under the ring for 3 hours, so that when the cage match happens and the cage is put up, they can come out and do dastardly wrestling things to the hero of the match. But they have to be under there the whole night together before anybody shows up. So this is them going under there and talking. The other guy's name is Jamie. "I guess this is the spot," said Jamie. "Home sweet home for the next 2 hours at least," said Donnie Diamond, and he tore open the cardboard, and the first can of cheap beer cracked open behind it. Jamie could hear the older, more famous man's large guttural swigs through the dark. That first still minute was thick with dark silence and anxiously quiet, until there was another loud slurp from the beer can, and Donnie Diamond asked, "How long you been working for this dude?" "A few years, since he started promoting shows. I grew up with Dusty Shiflett," answered Jamie. "That's that dude's boy, ain't it?" "Yeah." "Ha, no wonder he's the champion." Diamond took another loud gulp from the can, crinkled it into a ball in his hands, and dropped it into the empty bucket. Another can cracked open right behind it, and the older wrestler kept on. "If that dude's name is Jenkins, why is the boy's name Shiflett?" "Well, there's a lot of Shifletts around these parts. They came down from the mountains when they built the Mountain Parkway back in the 50s, I guess. But they're country folk and make up a good chunk of the crowd at these shows. So Dusty Jenkins became Dusty Shiflett when we started having matches here. Shiflet, huh? I don't think I know no shiflets in Tennessee. There's a bunch of them around here, some with one F and some with two F's in their name. I guess two brothers went different ways somewhere back along the family tree after falling out. The one F ones tend to be more well-to-do, and the two F ones tend to be the wilder, more country people. So Dusty Shiflet is with two F's. He always says that in the ring. My name is Shiflet with two F's because I love to fight and I love to do something else that starts with F, Jamie explained. The older wrestler laughed and crinkled another can into a bowl in the dark and dropped it in the bucket. The PA system outside started playing radio country music, background sounds until the show actually started. How about you, Jamie? Why they call you Chopper Rodriguez, corrected Jamie. I wrestle as Chopper Rodriguez. I don't know. There's a lot of Mexicans around here nowadays, and Mr. Jenkins thought having a Mexican guy wrestling might get him to come see the matches. Are you a Mexican? Asked Donnie Diamond. Nah, just playing one. Good. Wildbird Donnie Diamond took another hard swallow from another can. If you're Chopper Rodriguez, why do they call you Jamie? Because that's my real name. You know my real name, Jamie? Asked the older wrestler, spitting Jamie's name at him with a touch of obvious condescension, even in the darkness under the ring. What? Followed Jamie. Wildbird Donnie Diamond. That's my goddamn real name, he whispered emphatically. Jamie could tell the man was poking at the dark while he said it. If you gonna be something, boy, you best goddamn be it. And another can crumpled into blackness. And I feel like that's a good starting point because Raven Mack is my real name. That's what people really know me as. That is so much my real name. When I have a check written out to Raven Mack, I can take it to my bank and they cash it for me. That's my real name. Anybody who knows me as Raven Mack. However, that's not my government name. That's not the name that was on the degree I got from VCU in 1996. It's not on my driver's license. It's not my official name. But I put a lot of work into that name to make it my real name. Now, what I come from, I'm not really equipped to be successful in the sense that I could have took my government name and made something of it. I come from a place where people are known as stuff like Raven, stuff like Tuna, Tank, Wolf, Bozo, Pug and Pug, Big Pug and Little Pug were actually Pug and Puggy, Flukio, Dot, on and on and on, all these crazy names. That's what I grew up from. I come from that. Now with my skill set, I could be, I'm a decent writer. I could be a novelist who wrote rural noir, did the bare-knuckled, whiskey-soaked, back-road tales, rural gritty reality, trailer parks and junkyards and old cars that have been abandoned in the mountains and people fighting in hard scrabble lives. I could do that. I could highlight my own work history, how I raked blueberries as a migrant farmer, worked in a charcoal factory, worked in construction for years and years with a lot of screwed up people, saw a lot of crazy things. I could do that, do the rural noir, try to be successful with that. Maybe if I was lucky, it'd get a little notoriety. I'd get a movie deal out of it, or the book rights would be bought for a movie deal. I could go we'll call it the winner's bone path to success. I could follow Daniel Woodrell and go that route. But here's the thing. If I did that, I'd still have to go back home to where the Bozos, the Puggies, the Wolves, and all those people are. And I'd have to answer to them about sharing these stories that come from the real life that it's made from. I'd have to answer to that. And on top of that, if I'm somebody going back there who has a book out and somebody bought the movie rights, man, Raven must be loaded now. He must have got paid to be doing all that. And that's just not the way the world works nowadays in those things. You don't get paid out the ass having a book. Most people who are creative types have to subsidize that in the world of academia. I mean, that's just the nature of reality. We don't have support for those things. So I don't really like to go that route, even though I've had an independent publisher bugging me for years. Hey, do this. Do that story you told me about. Flesh it out. Let's do this as a book. I can't really do that because I kind of came to the conclusion those things are more posturing, sort of a shuck and jive redneck dance for people who don't come from that world. And personally for me, with what I do, I don't want to make comfortable people more comfortable. I want to make people who are uncomfortable feel more comfortable. And that's where Rojo Neku word fighting arts comes from. Because most of my life, I felt rather uncomfortable. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell about a dream I used to have. I started having this recurring dream. Now, I can speak a little bit of Spanish, not much, job site Spanish, enough where I can talk trash to the Colombian barista lady at work, and I can cuss the ladder out and things like that, but I don't speak it fluently by any means. I started having this dream, I guess about 1.5 years ago, where I was in some type of body shop I eventually figured out, and everybody was talking in Spanish. It was all in Spanish, nothing in English, like in speaking very fluently. And I didn't understand it, but obviously what I was seeing through understood it, if that makes sense. So it was kind of weird, like where is this coming from, being I don't understand Spanish. I've obviously heard enough that my brain's subconscious can make it sound like Spanish is going on in a correct, fluent way. So I kept having this dream, like every night I would have this dream. And it was working in a body shop, and these guys were doing it, working for the guy who was my eyes, making these crazy compartments in cars, like secret compartments where you would have to, like, you know, be under the seat or in the airbag spot, and you'd have to sit in the driver's side and cut the defrost on and hit 2 buttons at once, and like it would pop open the thing, like, you know, crazy smuggling compartments. Eventually one night, the guy I dreamt through went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. And I saw this old, dark-skinned dude, not old like super old, probably like late 50s, early 60s, crazy white hair, and everybody called him Papi Blanco. So that made sense to me. I'm like, oh, Papi Blanco. And I figured, oh, he's probably a Dominican guy, you know. So I started looking up online, crazy body shops, you know, secret compartments and everything, and I found out in the Bronx, there's Jerome Avenue, where you can get like these crazy customized secret compartments. So I'm like, oh man, I'm dreaming about some dude in the Bronx. Like I'm dreaming through him, or we're connected, or something's going on here. Like there's some connection. And I became just obsessed with it because it was such a neat world, like listening to the New York Yankees games in Spanish on the AM radio and working on these cars. Like it was such a neat life that I was dreaming about. So I went on the internet, went on Google Maps. I love going on Google Maps, street views, looking at places. If you're a writer, it's a great tool just to get lost somewhere. So I was going on Street View, going down Jerome Avenue, you know, spending hours just, you know, clicking the thing, move forward, look around, click the thing, move forward, look around. Doing that, trying to figure out where this shop might be. Because I said, maybe it's real. Maybe it's I'm connected to something. No luck, because all my dreams are inside the shop, so I just see the kind of old flake and blue paint. I'm like, you're not going to see that from Google Street Views. So, in sort of a weird act that caused some distress to my wife, I took a Friday and a Monday off from work and actually caught the China bus from Charlottesville to New York to go wander Jerome Avenue in the Bronx looking for a body shop that had blue inside. So at the time it didn't seem that crazy. Once I was actually immersed in the world of the Bronx and Jerome Avenue, being a country boy from Fluvanna County nowadays, a little overwhelming. I'm a street savvy person, but I'm only so street savvy, and there's always people who are more savvy than you, and ran into a couple of them, narrowly avoided some bad situations. Not to mention the fact most body shops are not open on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday, so that was a little, I wasn't getting anywhere. So I realized it was stupid, did a little poking around on Monday, but just very safely. It's not like, I mean, you kind of come to reality, I can't walk into every body shop and look and see if there's blue paint on the wall and an old crazy guy with white hair. Couldn't do that. So I had to accept the fact it was just a dream, and I came home and enjoyed the dreams, and then they stopped happening so often. So I started adjusting my diet, started taking B6, eating roast chicken a lot because of the, you know, same thing that's in turkey is in that, and that increases your dream state. Trying to dream it, reading about lucid dreaming, but I never could get the hang of that. But it started slipping further away. And then I wasn't dreaming about Papi Blanco at all. And, you know, I went on Google Maps and I looked at the streets again, hoping it would trigger something, trying to just regenerate those same things, those same inputs to make it happen. But I guess it just stopped, and I realized one morning when I woke up and I was no Papi Blanco dreams for like 2 months, and I was getting ready for my shitty job as an administrative assistant at UVA. I wasn't going to dream about Papi Blanco no more. It was gone. And all I had was my job. All I had was being an administrative assistant who sits at a desk, answers emails, does the boring, mundane crap I have to do to make money. He was gone. So, that's my life, administrative. Now I will tell you, since we're here, even though there is a camera, that story's not true. None of that happened. I did not go to the Bronx and wander the streets and try to find some crazy man named Papi Blanco. In fact, I've never even dreamt of Papi Blanco, not even once. It was an idea I had in my head. I thought of it, thought about the fact, hey, that could exist. You could go on Google Street View and wander it. You could become obsessed with that. You could take a day off from work and go up there and do that. That makes sense. That fits the lives we have today to do that. So I like to tell that story in that sense. Usually I don't tell people it's not real. I told it at one of the haiku things and I left it hanging like that. And I had 3 or 4 people come up and be like, man, I'm real sorry about Papi Blanco. But that's what I try to do, because honestly, my life is boring. I'm not a success in the normal terms of success with what I do. I have a self-published book. I self-published. That's a huge stigma for writers. They're just now getting around the idea it's okay to self-publish. It's like a stigma, a black eye. Somebody hit you across the face and said, you couldn't do nothing but self-publish? Damn. So I just accept that. The zines, I use the internet. Since it's like 99, my friend bought me ConfederateMack.com to put that online. I had a website that was very popular in the early 2000s where I was getting 1,000 unique visitors a day, 10,000 page hits a day, which in 2001 time was pretty damn busy. A lot going on. I burnt it down one day, just shut it down. I do own Confederate Mack again. I stopped owning it and some sketchy place had it for a couple of years, but then they saw there was no value in it, so I did get it back. But I do that. I do the blog website thingy that Paul mentioned. I do Twitter. I do these zines. I started carving haiku onto railroad spikes just to have them out and about. I just do whatever because honestly, my day-to-day life sucks. At home is good. I got a good family. I got a good home base, and that allows me to create the way I'd like to. But just the normal day-to-day life is just a piece of shit, to be honest with you, for lack of a better term. I hate it. It's stifling. It smothers me. It kills me little by little. So I do these things to ease that pressure. That's basically what I do. Not because I feel like I'm building any type of personal brand or I'm going to get some payoff in the end. It's because I have to. I have to. Just like anything, eating dinner, drinking water, I have to. So I've actually been wrestling with this really hard this week in anticipation of talking to people about this, because it depresses me sometimes, because I see people who are, from afar they look to be successful. They are writers, they do this, they are artists, they do this or that. They are supported in some way. And that's frustrating for me. But oddly enough, I went back to the same thing I always go back to, which actually started here at VCU in the early 90s when I took a couple classes with Dr. Cliff Edwards in the Religious Studies department. And he introduced me, even though I wasn't the best student, I didn't make it every day, and I wasn't the best student, but when I was there, I paid attention. He introduced me to Han Shan, Cold Mountain, as translated by Gary Snyder. And that started a deep love of the old Chinese poets, the old Japanese poets. And this past week, when I was actually fairly depressed because I hate my damn job, but I still have to do it because I have to support this fabulous lifestyle I've built, I went back to my Li Po and Du Fu books and was just reading them and these old Chinese poets. And they wrote poetry not because they were going to become a famous writer or do anything or be recognized. It just did it because it was an exercise that was expected of them to make their days work. It's just what they did. So that helped me come to terms with that. a little bit this week. It's a constant struggle. But it also explains why I became so disattached to what I do that I decided to start doing these haiku spikes. Because the beer box haiku actually started when I kept note cards in my pocket and wrote haiku as a house painter whenever I could. Because the only way I could actually keep myself focused on writing while being a shitty house painter was I had no card, I'd whip it out, write something down, nobody's gonna yell at me. And I have it at the end of the day, so I came up with that. But then we get so attached to our creations and owning the idea and the poem, the story, whatever we create, we own it. I started doing the spikes because I thought about Han Shan, Cold Mountain, who was famous for writing his poems on cliffs and caves and just out in the wilderness. He's considered one of the immortals of Tao. He just did them out in the woods, and they found out about him, and they collected what they could. So all we have today is what they found. We have no idea how much he actually wrote. He may have wrote thousands of poems. It may have been the 100 or so we know. So if I can get this thing open here. I started carving haiku on railroad spikes that I picked up along the railroad tracks. Just because they're things I could give to people. I could actually carve it, throw it on the side of the road. I was talking to David about working at UVA. I've actually left a couple of these in the gardens on each side of the lawn there, tucked away. They're gone because I check every now and then, but I've hid them there, and they will rust when out in nature, and that's fine because I'm not attached to what happens to it. I do it, it's done. I don't keep these poems. I carve them on there, it's gone. It's an act of letting go of it. And part of that, the validation for me is not in selling the idea, it's just doing the idea. Just being able to do something is validating for me. And with that in mind, I think about recent revelations online, recent tracking that happens and those things. And the term that you often hear is transparency. We want transparency. Now, I have a couple friends that I work on projects with. In fact, my friend Neil in Michigan, we're working on a book completely made up of two brothers who go to Africa to cover football, soccer, because we've created this fake situation where drug dealers from America bought football teams in Africa and then created these football academies in America to get young athletes good at soccer to go to Africa and be successful soccer players instead of concussing themselves to death in football, regular football or basketball or whatever. So we've created this whole world, and we call the style we write, we've given it the name, and when I say give it the name, I don't give a damn if you remember this or not. We call it new writing, which has been used before. But if you Google new writing, you're not going to find anything about us. You're not going to find anything about what we think, any of that, because it's hidden. People are so concerned about, well, they used to be, about search engine optimization, having your brand known, do it online so you're known. No, let it hide. Because here's the deal with the transparency. You are asked, and we're moving towards this. I think Google was at one time trying to have you use your real name. Facebook tries to do that. And by the way, I'm Raven Mack on Facebook, so you can find me under my real name on Facebook. They ask for your real name. It's because they want the transparency looking into you. They want that transparency that way. But you don't get that going back. And we've seen that with the NSA things that have happened, all the stuff that's been leaked and how angry people are, how they don't want this to be known, that to be known, how even just last night I saw on the news, Google said, well, first part of 2013, the government made more requests than ever on people's information. I don't believe that. I believe they've always asked that much. It's just these revelations have caused Google to say, oh, we need to just show a little bit more here and say, this actually happened. They don't give us the same transparency. So the way it works is, it's like those old shoplifting windows, or those windows you only see in crime shows nowadays, where you can see through it at what's going on the other side, but the person in there, like in a lineup or something, they can't see through the window. So we're on the far side, not seeing through the window, but they want transparency to see through to us. So, with what I do, with the way I do things, the new writing, messing it up, blurring that transparency. Don't use your real name all the time online. If you do use Facebook, do posts that have absolutely no semblance to your real life to it. You went to the Bronx to look for body shops. You're dreaming about some old Dominican guy. Make up things to blur that transparency. And that's hard for us because a lot of us put so much effort into that online digital footprint. We want people who we care about to see the real. But we can make that clear to them that, hey, it's not always going to be perfectly true. And they'll still get a sense of what's really you. But you also blur the transparency of someone watching you. You muck it up. You make it so there's shadows there because they can't monitor everything. They collect it and they can try to filter different parts of it, but they can't physically have somebody digging through every morsel of data they have. They can't. And that's eventually what will cause it to break down, is the fact that it's just not possible to do that. So if you blur it, it's you screwing it up for them too, which is important, I think. So they have that fog, but we have that fog. And actually it's funny because my daughter is 14, my oldest child of 3 daughters, which if you had seen my old Confederate Mack magazines, they were very misogynistic and drunken and angry because that's where I was at that time in life. So having 3 daughters has been very interesting because it's forced me to grow as a person in ways I probably wouldn't have grown otherwise. But my oldest is 14, she's a little budding feminist punk rocker, and she's online, so I'm trying to give her ideas about how to go online. And she's already got a fake name. That's what most of her stuff is, under a different name than her own name. And it makes me very happy because I grew up where the internet came about after I was an adult. So my digital footprint comes along as I choose it. There are people growing up where their digital footprint is being built as we speak entirely. And when they're 25, 10 years from now, that digital footprint's still going to be there. It's important to blur that. It's important to make it so some asshole trying to give them a job or give them a loan or give them anything, or even some asshole just trying to find out more about them, doesn't use that digital footprint, that transparency, and say, this is what that person is. You have to be careful of that. All right, so intellectual property. That's one of the problems with my philosophy. If you don't make it so it's easy to find, if you don't make it so people know where it is, if you burn bridges and change how you do it every 7 years or so, people can't find it. I used to be upset with that. I used to think I would be successful in some extent financially. Let me just make that clear now. I am a success with what I do. I don't make money at it, but I am a success. Financially is how we tend to think it, and I used to think I could be a success, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten more comfortable with letting that go. And my ideas on ownership of those things have changed a little bit too. We have a lot of talk about intellectual property, people owning the ideas, those types of things going on nowadays. If you think of an idea and you Google it, chances are somebody's thought of something very similar. If you think of, let's say you form a band and you think of a band name and you Google it. Hey, there's a band in Texas that already had that name. Oh, there's a band from Mexico that had that name just in Spanish. It already exists. So it's hard to think of ideas that have not been done anywhere now that we have access to all these ideas together. So the idea of intellectual property ownership is eventually, well, I'm just going to share my philosophy, and I will say you don't have to agree with anything I say, obviously. Intellectual property is going to have to die. It's going to have to stop. You can't own ideas. And the way I think of it is like physical property. There are people who own physical property, and if you're homeless, you can't stay there. Nobody lives there, but you can't either, because somebody else owns that physical property. Intellectual property is like that. People get ideas, they do them, execute them in a poor fashion, or they have the idea and sit on it and don't do anything with it, and you can't do nothing with it. I'm more of a Creative Commons anarchist type in that I feel like we should be able to take those things and make something of it. And I feel that way about what I do. I don't really give a damn if somebody takes ideas I have and runs with it. If somebody profits off of it, that's going to bother me, but not in a legal sense. That's just going to bother me in a right and wrong sense. And right and wrong has very little to do with legal and illegal. And I'll handle it in a right and wrong manner should I ever come across that. But I'm not going to own everything I do, because if I keep myself properly tuned in, if I keep myself going, I should be able to do more. It should be a part of my life, like those old Chinese poets, where I'm always doing it till the day I die in some way or another. So that goes back to the transparency, the clear glass. And I work in the neurosurgery department at UVA, and actually it's funny because we've joked, me and Paul, about these being like TED Times underpass speeches when I do hand-to-hand haiku. And a doctor that I work under partially is speaking at TED Talks Charlottesville today about a project he's working on. And in that project, they map out the brain and they burn a little part of the brain to stop the tremors in people. And I've actually gotten to see this procedure done. And you know what? I'm not going to talk trash about science. I'm not going to talk trash about that because he's a great guy and he's coming from a good place. But I will tell you, working in neurosurgery, I've done a lot of reading, and like functional MRI is a big thing, and it's more of that transparency. People feel like they're seeing into the brain. You just sitting in this machine and reacting to words or images is showing us exactly how the brain works. We're getting a good transparent image of what's going on in the brain. And this is going to be used by marketers. All these things we are finding out that we've always considered psychological triggers. Psychological triggers. It's speaking to me psychologically. It's making me want to do this or that. These are actually neurological things. These are things that are happening in our brain that are being done. We've seen this with brain injuries where they thought post-traumatic stress disorder was just psychological, but it's actually a physical change in people's brain. That's part of that transparency too, but we don't know. We don't know. We're looking at parts of the brain doing this or that. We're not getting the big picture. Neurosurgery kind of creeps me out knowing all that stuff. It's been fun working in it, but it really freaks me out. But with that transparency, with blurring it, with what I do, what it comes down to is I'm not only trying to blur that transparency, I'm trying to smash it. I'm trying to break it into little pieces, little shards, little broken bits of glass and broken bits of creative thing here and there and here and here and here, and scattering it throughout my life with my friends, with people I don't know, doing it anywhere because it's beautiful. I love it. It's just stuff everywhere that you've done. I love those shards. The transparency smashed to shards. And I actually read a story, an article this week by a lady, Catherine Schultz, who wrote about how, I can't remember what her book was, but she wrote an article about Twitter and how it's changed the way she thinks. She's more fragmented. She has shorter attention span. And that's a thing that's happening. That's happening. Our brains are becoming quicker and quicker. But that's the inputs we have. I'm not going to stand here and be a Luddite and say that's horrible. That's what we have. And that can be beautiful too. Because when you have all those shards, when you have all those fragments, you can still do things with it. You can still make things from it. And what it seems to me like a lot is when hip-hop first started, it was fragments, it was pieces, it was samples being brought together. And people were like, this is not music. That's not music. That's somebody else's music that you're stealing and doing something new that's not music. But it was still music, and it still grew, and it still went. We're seeing that with writing now. We're going to have fragment coming together, the shards being put together as writing. And the thing I go to with it, for my personal influence with it, is the old Islamic mosaics. Just beautiful, elaborate mosaics that were done. And that was because there were cultural limitations on what they could do artistically. So instead of being like, damn, we can't do nothing, they were like, all right, that's cool. Let's do a mosaic. Let's make this whole giant temple just this insanely beautiful mosaic. And that's what they did. So as we become fragmented, as we take that transparency and bust it into shards, we're not destroying our chances at the old way, traditional way. I wrote a novel, and I was signed to a book deal, and now I will do a book tour. And this is an intelligent novel to be analyzed. We've got fragments, we've got shards, and we're putting it together and we're making a mosaic. That's how I look at it. So I felt kind of bad for Paul when he had to look through all these things I did and make sense of it, because honestly, I'd be very afraid of having to do that. Because it is a shard, and I'm a person who is attracted to the shards because I have at times in my life. I started out as a somewhat broken person, And I'm not going to a God kick because I ain't on that. I did everything myself. In fact, you know what? I started doing sonnets this past year because I've been doing haiku for a year. I started doing freestyle sonnets. Somebody give me a subject, I'm gonna write a sonnet. And I would write a sonnet, 12 syllables per line, rhyme scheme all the way through. I'd do it in 15 minutes. So I started doing these things called freestyle sonnets. And before I even tell you about my broken one, I'll just tell you when I wrote one. I'll read you two of them actually. All right. And you can tell I used to listen to a lot of rap music, BMC, when I read them. Born raving at the bottom of the totem pole, hustle like raindrops for new blooms on crooked wood from family tree where die-hard habits took their toll. Juggling bills and ideals while fighting to find good in a world where wealth defines worth, often from birth. Cursed with surf DNA plus third world streams of thought, never bought into belief systems beyond earth. Still stained by dirt amidst all the plastic I bought, can't wash it clean in water. There's grime in my soul, there's rhymes in my head with reasoning that seems lost, calculating for an angle strict squares can't hold. They've forgotten the hard stone soul beneath soft moss, but my bed's hard scrabble. Still I dream without shame, chasing my trickster destiny. Raven's my name. Then I got another one that's about my dad and grandpa, because my dad died when he was 47, he was a drunk. My grandfather died when he was 46, he was a drunk. I am not a drunk. Allah firstborn metaphysical heavyweight of Maharan Mack mill clam white bread with deep scars burned dark into leather flesh inclined to tempt fate. Natural waves on all days that end in shine, stars meander drawing across dim-lit country skies. Both paternal branches below me broke before 50. Father and grandfather with stones, heal lies, mistakes made proudly, stretching from Korean wool through broken chainsaws, choking on steel bloodlines, choked by alcoholic infusions falsely distilled in stainless shine factories. The damn devil yoked dreams of the doomed into tumors, thus he killed living, breathing men who created me with thrust. Fuck you, mystery salvations, in me I trust. And I quit drinking with no God, none of that. I did it through creativity. That's what Rojo Necker Word Fighting Arts is. I took the self-destruction, took all those broken shards, scattered them out, put them back out there. So that's why I consider myself a success, regardless of the money that ever comes to me or doesn't come to me in life. I am a success because I took that broken thing and I built a mosaic. Beautiful mosaic of craziness and chaos and weirdness and all the inputs that the internet and the modern age and 1,000 different things in our brain all at once. And I made that mosaic, and it's a beautiful mosaic. And that's what I do with Rojo Necker Word Fighting Arts. I have kids that I do these lessons with. I teach them these things. It's empowerment. Because again, I don't want to make the comfortable feel more comfortable. I want those that are uncomfortable to feel more comfortable. They need the comfort. I needed the comfort. We all need that comfort. It needs to go to everywhere. And if I'm a financial success, that doesn't help anybody be more comfortable. I'm already comfortable. Ain't got no money, but I'm comfortable and I'm happy. And that's what I do. And I will explain real quick. I don't know if anybody's going to sign up for the hand-to-hand haiku thing, but that was born from one of the lessons with the Rojo Necker Word Fighting Arts. I had a group of kids where we lived near Charlottesville. There's a lot of single moms. Took all these crazy kids and we used to have this, I have this inflatable boat. And what I would do is these kids would come with me. We would go to Winjana, James River State Park, which is in Buckingham, MATX right there. I'd put them in the river and give them 24 note cards. I'd say, all right, see you in Howardsville. I'd go down, drive on down. They'd float down the river. 4 hours later, they'd show up in Howardsville. I said, all right, let's see what you got. They'd give me the cards. I'd say, this is good. I don't know, it's kind of weak. And I wasn't judging them on what they had. It wasn't like I was being like an art critic or anything. This is whether they were being truthful with themselves. I said, nah, all right, so they'd have however many cards they got back in the river. I'd go on down to Warren Ferry, wait for them there, another 3 hours down the road. So we did that till all the kids could get 24 good haiku. However, one weekend I did this, and we started on Saturday morning about 9 a.m. We had this one kid that just stubborn will, man, and he refused to go with it. And we ended up having to go all the way to Goochland and didn't finish until Sunday night at like 10:30. So the parents were kind of pissed. And for me, I guess I was as stubborn as him because I didn't give up. I wasn't like, all right, we're done, because everybody else was done except for this one kid. I was like, nah, fuck fuck it, man, you gotta do this, come on, back in the water. So we finally got done and went back, and the mom just gave me hell. So what I started doing was, gave the kids 24-note cards. I said, look, you're gonna float from here to here, it's about a 6-hour float. When you come off, we're gonna have a haiku tournament. That way we know it's 6 hours. Nobody's mom was gonna try to hit me upside my head when I dropped the kid off too late. So that's where this came from. And the haiku thing came from that. And I actually have a lot of lessons like that that are built into this. But it's all about giving people that ability to express, that ability to do what they can with the broken pieces that are them. Because there's a lot more broken people than there are together people in this world. And that's not just poor people, that's wealthy people too. You can't judge anybody for where they were born, whether they were born in a trash heap or born in a mansion. Nobody can help where they were born. We're all broken in some way or another, but none of us are completely broken. So we can take those shards, we can take our shards, we can take the things that come in and shard us up and fragmentize us even more, and we can make that mosaic. And that's kind of what I try to do, and what I wish more people would do, is just be happy with that mosaic, be happy to share it, not worry about smoothing it all out into a pretty picture. Just go with it. So that's what Rojo Neko Word Fighting Arts is. That's what Raven Mack does. I am Raven Mack, for real. That's my real name. Thank y'all for listening to me talk for a little while. I mean, ain't many of y'all. If y'all got a question, you can. I can't guarantee I'd have a good answer, but.
What day is it?
Friday. I do have my pamphlets here that you're welcome to take any and all of them. I call them truth-free pamphlets because with the internet, you can always find information. We've seen this politically way too much the last couple of years. You can always find something to prove your point. This is truth. This is how it is. This is true. Look at this link. See this news article. This is true. Truth has become so perverted and crazy. You can find truth there. It's like you can look at the Bible and find a Bible quote to back up anything you believe if you look deep enough. That's kind of what it's come. So I call these truth-free because it's more the spirit of what it is real. It may not be true, it may not be false, it may not be either, but it's real. And I'm more into that gray instead of the black and white. So help yourself to those. Any of y'all want to take part in the haiku thing? I did bring a haiku spike that I carved especially for this, from what I just talked about, and because this is VCU. I don't know how many of y'all follow basketball, but I wrote a haiku last weekend. I carved this: creating havoc within all given frameworks for self-expression, because that's what I do. And it's got havoc on it, so it's, you know. I like the idea that maybe VCU will be encouraging that crazy art thing, because when I left here, that was when they were first building that business school, and it looked like things were going in a different direction. I'm glad it kind of reeled back the other way a little bit. So, that's it. Thank y'all.
So, about 4 o'clock, if anyone wanted to do the haiku battle, we actually have some note cards and pens. You want to kind of do it on the fly. Otherwise, thanks for...
If you want to, you can. If you don't, I will be doing the last one of the year at a little coffee house called Bond in Charlottesville on Thursday night. It's grown each month, and I'm taking 2 months off after this until February to finish up a couple writing projects in the winter. The way they work is we have flags for people, and I brought 2 new flags today. Greenland, because global warming, people are like, oh man, we'll develop Greenland now. But people have always been there, and they're building lives there. They've always been there, and they already have lives there. So it's not like you develop in a new place, it's existing. And then Somalia, because Somalia is the place that people always bring up. It's lawless, it's crazy. There's no government, it's chaos. I got into looking up dashboard videos of Africa, because actually from going to Google Street View, you can't get Google Street View anywhere in Africa pretty much other than South Africa. And I was like, well, what's going on in Africa? You know, maybe I want to look at, like, you know, Congo or Nigeria or somewhere like that. But there's all these dashboard videos of driving through African cities. There's just like this whole fringe culture of people who do this. So I was looking at Mogadishu videos, and you know, it's this chaos war zone, the worst place on earth, pirates, lawlessness. You go there, there's billboards for cell phones, stores. It's people building normal lives still. Even though there's no government and chaos, people still build lives. So I brought both of these because we always think about developing or saving or doing. People are still building lives. They're still doing it. Everywhere you go, the worst place you go through in Richmond, somebody's building a life right there. best place you go, somebody's building a life, so, yeah. So I don't know if anybody's up for the haiku thing. Paul's won too many spikes already. So that's it. I can't sit up here in front of y'all, it's weird.